almost 20 years, I was a detective, homicide detective in Norway. And that was a task that led me in behind the police barriers into the crime scenes. And that is where I like to take my readers inside in the police work, where not that many people are allowed. And from my time behind these police barriers, I have seen how serious crime can leave behind brutal traces. And for many years, it was my task to talk to the victims, often only the people who are left behind in murder cases. And it was also my job to talk to the people who have committed these crimes. So I think this to stand face to face with other people's feelings, it's something that I take with me into my books and make some sense of some kind of authentic atmosphere in the stories, a kind of true crime, if you will. First novel, my debut novel from 2004, is based on a true murder story. It's called A Key Witness. My writing career kind of started my first day at work in the police when I was a patrolling officer, because my first task was to drive out to a murder scene. And that was a very special feeling. This was a 70-year-old man who was found brutally murdered in his own house. And to cross over that threshold, to walk from room to room in this house and see how there had been a fight, a matter of life and death, going on from room to room, ending out in the hallway. It was a very special feeling for a young policeman. So when I tried to write my first novel almost 10 years later, I picked up this old case, because this case was never solved. Back in my time, my task back then was only to stand outside the crime scene. I had to strip the police barriers around the crime scene and hold the press and all the people away. But the cases always interested me, and in my debut novel there is a solution, but in real life the case is not solved. But I do still I receive information from time to time in this case. Just recently someone stepped forward to me with new information in this old murder case. But that is all the only time I based my story on a true murder case. Well, back almost 20 years ago, when I had to create my own main character, I was already back then, I was tired of reading about lonely policemen going around in the streets, solving murder cases all by themselves while being drunk. I wanted a policeman as a main character who was more like the policeman I knew from my daily work. So Wisting is based on, you might say, a true detective, but to tell you that there are a lot of me in him will be to kind of brag about myself and my investigating skills, because William Wisting is a good detective, but foremost he's a good human being. This is maybe my darkest story. It starts with this man who is convicted for 2 killings. He had stayed in prison for several years, and from his prison cell he reached out to the police saying that he is willing to confess a 3rd killing, and also want to show the police where the remains of his 3rd victim is. but to be able to show the police this, they have to bring him out of prison. And it's not to reveal too much, that to tell you that he is not turning back. And I was shown around in the police department in Los Angeles at the homicide division, but I had to ask him, this officer then, Tim Garcia is his name, what case are you working on now? And the answer was that they were working on a case with a man who had just confessed 66 killings. But he also told me that you will soon be able to read this in newspapers all over the world, because this afternoon we're having a meeting with the FBI, and when the FBI is involved, then the news story gets out. And this is true. When I returned a couple of weeks later, this was the story about this serial killer he had. But when the case was released, he had confessed over 80 murders. Mr. Little was the name of this killer, and Tim Garcia, he had interviewed him, and he told me, like, you know, the way Americans do, to talk to this man was to look into his eyes, was to look into pure evil, he told me. But that made me interested. I had to go through my own cases and think about when I, in my work as a detective, had met people that were evil, but that were pure evil. I have met a lot of people who have committed evil acts, but only 2 or 3 people that I've been thinking about as being real evil, that enjoy to get other people to suffer, enjoy to see other people in pain. And Tom Kerr, the main character in my latest novel, is that type of person. He's pure evil. So I guess my inspiration comes from the real world, and well, motivation. I have very joy of writing, so I don't have to look for motivation or inspiration. It's all around. I have 2 series for children. There's the Clue series for kids aged 10 to 14, and then there is the stories about Detective Agency number 2 for smaller kids. And it started with the Clue series. And what I think that all established authors, maybe they want to give something back to what made them a reader or made them an author. And for me, it was the kind of stories I read when I was a teenager. So what I wanted to do was to recreate the kind of joy of reading that I experienced when I was aged 10 to 14, and that is the Clue stories. For kids, a detective story, a crime story, is real good to get young people, to get kids to be better readers, because it starts with a mystery, and the answer can be on next page, and if the answer is not there, they have to read one more page, or just one more page, and one more page to get the solutions. So a mystery story for kids make them are making kids good readers, because they're reading more and more and more just to get the answer. We are just about to publish a new novel in Norway, so that will be out in Poland next year. The Norwegian title is Case 1569. It's a case number on the title. But I'm the kind of writer that in the end of writing, when I'm almost up to finish writing, I get a new idea that I think is a better story. So I'm getting eager to tell the next story. So already now, before my next novel is published in Norway, I have got this great idea for a new novel. Poland is also the country where all my stories are published. In the UK, you can't get the 4 or 5 first novels, but Max Lova has gone back to the start and published all my novels. So there is interest, and I understand. So if I shall say anything, so thank you.